todavía más el acelerador. Y para ello contamos ahora mismo con Ross Gerber, presidente and CEO en Gerber, Kawasaki Wealth and Investment Management. Ross, thank you so much for having us a few minutes.
Thank you.
Ross, Powell is facing the inflationary spiral and the ghost of Paul Volcker. We have to, yes, because the last time the Fed faced an inflation as high as it is today was in the early 80s. It raised interest rates to double-digit levels at 1980. And in all this process, it caused a deep recession and a sharp rise in the unemployment rate. Do you think the US is facing the same risk right now?
No, not at all. And I think that these comparisons that really Powell has created between Volcker in the late 70s and 80s and today is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. I grew up during that period of time. And then at that time, America produced no oil, and we had just invented a thing called the computer chip. So when you're trying to compare the disinflationary effects of technology over the last 20, 30, 40 years and how it's really pushed inflation down to a period of time that really computers didn't even exist, it's absurd. So Powell has overreacted to a one-time, once-in-a-100-year event with the pandemic and the extreme volatility that's been created in the economies of the world because of COVID and the responses from the U.S. government. So rates did need to go up, but we've now reached a point where the Fed, I think, has raised rates far enough, and it's very important that we prevent a deep recession like they did in the 80s when you had 10% unemployment caused by Paul Volcker. So if we had that happen in America today, you're literally talking about 5 or 6 million Americans losing their jobs right now. And that would be a disaster for America. So these comparisons are dangerous and I think really not beneficial to the markets and the public.
And which do you think Powell's bet will be? 75 basic points or 100?
Well, see, we trade in the bond market every day. So yesterday we were buying one-year bonds that yielded 3.99%, yet the Fed funds rate is 2.25. So the Fed has been so far behind inflation and rates that are actually in the markets today that we suspect that they're going to probably raise rates by 75 basis points to get to 3% today. But the market's already at 4%. So the Fed is well behind the market. And so today's movements actually don't matter at all because the market's already at 4%.
And Ross, the Federal Reserve is also facing highly unusual divergence in inflation between homeowners and renters, between high and low income groups, and differences across geographies. So which message do you think Powell will try to transmit today to markets?
Well, that's, I think, the real, question, because, like homeowners inflation is a cause actually by the Fed. So when you raise interest rates, it causes landlords to need to charge more rent to cover their interest payments. And so in essence, the Fed is causing inflation by raising rates, not to mention choking off finances for small business and equity lines for homeowners. So the Fed's approach right now is, having, I would say, a pretty dramatic effect on housing and such. So I think it's important for the Fed to acknowledge that it's time for them to sit back, see and digest these interest rate hikes, and see what happens with the economy before they take more aggressive action that can cause severe damage to the United States and the global economy.
Do you think, Ross, that today's hike has less power to lower inflation, but increases the risks for the growth of certain groups?
Well, as I said, I don't think today's hikes matter at all because the fact of the matter is rates have already moved and the Fed is well behind what the market's already doing. And so rates have gone up far enough. I think 4% rates on the short term is very, very high. Today I'm going to go out into the bond market and buy bonds all over the place. You can buy high yield bonds at 8.5%. You can buy tax-free California municipal bonds for over 5% tax-free, which implies an over 10% taxable equivalent yield from the state of California. These are incredible opportunities for savers, especially if you have your money in the bank. So, we have lots of cash for our clients, and we're going to be putting it to work in the bond market today and for quite some time, because I haven't seen yields like this probably since the 90s, I think, or the mid-2000s. So it's been quite some time for opportunities for people to really lock in great yields, because we don't think they'll last very long, because by next year we think rates will be lower.
Ross, Gerber, thank you so much for this analysis. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Y nosotros nos quedamos, por tanto, con este análisis internacional.